SLT Mobitel Fiber, the fiber of the nation. SLT Mobitel Fiber, the fiber of the nation.
නියම දෙහිසාරය සහිත විම් ලික්විඩ්.
එක හැන්දයි.
පිරිමැස්මයි.
Tonight, navigating murky waters. President Gotabaya Rajapaksa promises to follow through on his pledges and roll out a new constitution and an electoral system within the next year. Forex at stake. The tourism sector gives a wish list ahead of what they expect to be a bright restart to the winter season.
We have requested the government to offer a working capital facility to prepare our hotels. Interprovincial travels need to be aggressively eased.
The World Mental Health Day. Social stigma and inaccessibility of services identified by the WHO as Sri Lanka's failings in dealing with mental health issues.
Society approach to promote, protect and care for mental health.
Much more coming up on First at 9, this Sunday the 10th of October 2021.
KL Smart Family Season 4.
From AdaDerana, this is AdaDerana First at 9. Live from Studio 24 in Colombo.
Good evening and welcome to First at 9. I'm Mohammed Ekman. Now, President Gotabaya Rajapaksa today promised to follow through on his election pledges and ensure that a new constitution and an electoral system are rolled out within a year. Addressing the celebrations of the 72nd anniversary of the Sri Lanka Army in Anuradhapura, he said that he will drive the country towards prosperity and called on the support of the entire country.
The 72nd anniversary of the Sri Lanka Army was celebrated this morning at the Gajaba Regimental Headquarters in Salyapura in Anuradhapura under the patronage of President Gotabaya Rajapaksa. The head of state was given a warm welcome at the state-of-the-art new parade ground. After declaring the open of the new parade ground on the regimental headquarters, the president was invited to review the ceremonial parade by the parade commander.
විශේෂයෙන්ම අද පුළමියෙන්ම ත්‍රිවිධ හමුදාවටම ස්තුතිවන්ත වෙන්නට ඕන මේ රටේ පසුගිය වසර දෙක තුල ඔබ කළ සේවය ගැන අපි මුහුණු දුන්නු කොවිඩ් වසංගතය පාලනය කරගන්නට කළ කැපවීම ගැන. ඒ නිසා අපිට අද ඒ පාලනය කරගන්නට පුළුවන් වුණු එන්නත ලබා දීමේදී ඉහළම තැනක සිටින ලෝකේ රටක් බවට අපිට පත් වෙන්නට පුළුවන් වුණේ ඒ ඔබ කළ සේවය නිසායි. ඒ වගේම මම බලයට ආවට පස්සේ කිව්වා මේ රටේ ජාතික ආරක්ෂාව ප්‍රමුඛත්වයක් දීලා මම වැඩ කරනවා කියලා. ඒකට අවශ්‍ය සුදුසු නිලධාරීන් මම ඒ ස්ථානවලට පත් කරලා තිබෙනවා. අපි බෙදුම්වාදී ත්‍රස්තවාදය පරාජය කරා. දැන් අපි ඒක ස්ථාවර කරන්නට ඕන. ඒට හේතු වුණු කරුණු වලට අපි විසඳුම් දෙන්නට ඕන. ඒ පළාත් අපි දියුණු කරන්නට ඕන. පළාත්වල ඉන්න ජනතාවගේ ජීවන තත්ත්වය ඉහළ නංවන්නට ඕන. ඊළඟට තියෙන අන්තවාදී ආගම් ත්‍රස්තවාදය මුළු ලෝකයේම පවතින දෙයක්. ඒකට අපිට මොහොන දෙන්නට ඕන. එවැනි දෙයක් මේ රට තුල ඇති නොවන ආකාරයට මම ඒ ජනතාවට පොරොන්දු වුණු දෙයක් මම එය ඉෂ්ට කිරීමට කැප වෙලා ඉන්නවා. අපි පසුගිය අවුරුදු දෙකම සටන් කළේ කොවිඩ් වසංගතය පාලනය කරගන්නට. රට වසා තැබීම් විවිධ පාලන මේවා නිසා අපේ ආර්ථිකයේ විශාල පසුබෑමකට පත් වෙන්නට සිද්ධ වුණා. මම නිදහසට කරුණු කියන්නේ නැහැ ජනතාව වෙනුවෙන්. නමුත් මේ තත්ත්වයේ යටතේ අපි විශාල වැඩ කොටසක් කළා තිබෙනවා. හැබැයි ජනතාව මා කෙරෙහි රජය කෙරෙහි අපි ඔවුන් බලාපොරොත්තු වුණු ආකාරයට වැඩ උනේ නැහැ කියන එක ඔවුන්ගේ අප්‍රසාදයක් තියෙනවා. ඒක මම පිළිගන්නවා. මම විතරක් නෙවෙයි සියලු බැති ඇමතිවරු එක පිළිගන්නට ඕන. නමුත් අපි මේ කොවිඩ් තත්ත්වය පාලනය කළා නව සාමාන්‍ය තත්ත්වයක් යටතේ මේ රට විවෘත කළා නව ජවයකින් මේ රට ඉදිරියට ගෙනියන්නට මම ජනතාව වෙනුවෙන් පොරොන්දු වෙනවා. එදා මම පොරොන්දු වුණු විශේෂයෙන්ම නව විවස්ථාවක් ලබා දීම මගේ මීළඟ අවුරුද්ද ඇතුළතදී මම කරනවා. එහිදී විශේෂයෙන්ම ජනතාව බලාපොරොත්තු වුණු මේ නව ඡන්ද ක්‍රමයක් ඇති කිරීම. එය මම එන අවුරුද්ද ඇතුළත කරනවා. ඊයේ හවස මම රුවන්වැලි සෑය වැඳ ගන්නට ගිය වෙලාවේ ඒ අර පඩිපෙළ නගිනකොට තරුණ ස්වාමීන් වහන්සේ නමක් මට කිව්වා ජනාධිපතිතුමා එක රටක් එක නීතියක් ගේනවා කිව්වා. අපි ඒක ගැන බලාගෙන ඉන්නවා. මම මේ අවුරුද්ද ඇතුළතත් ඒ පොරොන්දුව ඉටු කරනවා. ඒ වගේමයි ජනතාව මගේ බලාපොරොත්තු වුණා මේ දූෂණය නැති කරන්නට. අපි හමුදා නිලධාරීන් විවිධ දෙපාර්තමේන්තුවල ඉහළ තනතුරු වලට පත් කළේ මූලික වශයෙන් මම මේ බලාපොරොත්තු ඇතුව. ශාල අභියෝගයක්. නමුත් අපි ඒක කරන්නට ඕනේ. අපි ඉදිරි වසර කීපය තුල මේ රට සෞභාග්‍ය සඳහා ගෙන යාමට මට සියලු දෙනාගේම සහයෝගය බලාපොරොත්තු වෙනවා. අද ලෝකයේම හමුදාවන් යුද්ධ කරන්නට පමණක් නෙවෙයි ජාතිය ගොඩනැගීමේ කටයුතු වල සෑම හමුදාවක්ම යෙදিলা තිබෙනවා. ඔබ ඒ වෙනුවෙන් විශාල වැඩ කොටසක් කරනවා. ඒ ඉදිරියටත් ඔබ කලයි කියලා මම බලාපොරොත්තු වෙනවා.
Afterwards, the president paid floral tribute to the founder of the Gajaba regiment, late Major Vijaya Vimalaratna. He also inaugurated the new administrative building and the ground of the regimental headquarters. Further, the head of state also laid the foundation stone for the Gajaba Regiment Sport Complex. Army Commander General Shavindra Silva presented a memento to mark President Gotabay's visit to the Gajaba Regiment headquarters. The head of staff also planted a sapling to mark his visit.
Where is the fairness in UN entities setting up offices in countries, or selective countries, I should say, to gather data for future accountability purposes? This was a key question Sri Lanka's permanent representative at the United Nations in New York, Mohan Piris, posed during his address at the 6th Committee General Debate on Crisis Resilience and Recovery Accelerating Progress towards the 2030 Agenda at the UN General Assembly.
The Constitution of Sri Lanka has extensive provisions on fundamental rights. These provisions have contributed to the promotion and protection of our citizenry, inclusive of child rights, the empowerment of women, and the protection of the different ethnic communities in the country. In addition, there are a number of personal laws related to the ethnic communities that are given effect through the judicial system. Sri Lanka reiterates its commitment to promoting and ensuring the rule of law at all levels. The rule of law is not the exclusive domain, of course, of the Western world, but is of universal application, which has gained much currency in contrast to other high-flown concepts such as human rights or democracy. Permit me to quote the words of Lord Bingham, a famous law lord from England, who said, quote, "All persons and authorities within the state, whether public or private, should be bound by, entitled to the benefits of laws publicly made, taking effect generally in the future and publicly administered in the courts." This easy definition, however, captures a number of features of a state which respects the rule of law. Members of the public are expected to comply with the law. Public officials are not expected to exceed their powers and are expected to apply the law equally. It provides for access to justice in order to claim the benefit of the law and the assurance that the courts are fair and impartial. As much as this definition summarizes the ingredients in a particular way, it also brings home a perfect message. What it simply says is that the law must be accessible. What it simply means that it must be easily understood. It must be clear. It must be predictable. Legal rights must be decided having regard to law and not discretion. Any power must be exercised lawfully, fairly, and reasonably. There must be equality before the law. Human rights must be respected. Trials must be fair, and states must comply with their obligations in international as well as national laws.
During the UNHRC sessions in March, a resolution was adopted against Sri Lanka. Included in it are provisions to collect, consolidate, analyze and preserve information and evidence, and to develop possible strategies for future accountability processes for gross violations of human rights or serious violations of international humanitarian law in Sri Lanka. A massive $2.8 million was allocated for this purpose. Sri Lanka's permanent representative at the United Nations in New York, Mohan Peiris, also alluded to this matter during his address during the 6th Committee General Debate on Crisis Resilience and Recovery, accelerating progress towards the 2030 agenda at the 76th session of the UN General Assembly last week.
Sri Lanka remains concerned about the dangers and threats posed by actions of various entities that seek to seriously undermine international law and the rule of law. It is absolutely essential that the rule of law is adhered to by both member states and international organizations. We must ensure that the actions of international organizations are also consonant with the rule of law. Even some of our own entities endeavor to go to many lengths and seek financial provision to collect, consolidate, analyze and preserve information and evidence as to develop possible strategies for future accountability purposes. Where, we ask, is the fairness in the application of the law? Is there procedural legal transparency in such process? Are there processes avoiding arbitrariness? Is there equality before the law? If so, why, I ask, are such instances been applied in a selective manner to selective countries? Why isn't it applicable to all countries? Where is the balance in the international dimension of the rule of law under such circumstances? In conclusion, Sri Lanka will continue nonetheless in its efforts to reinforce the rule of law within its domestic legal system and looks forward to contributing proactively and decisively to efforts to strengthen the rule of law at the international level.
State Minister of Production, Supply and Regulation of Pharmaceuticals, Professor Channa Jayasumana, yet again reminded the people today that the country is still not out of the woods as far as the pandemic situation is concerned. Further, he also urged those who are between 20 and 29 years of age to get themselves vaccinated without being misled by fake news.
A quarantine curfew that was imposed across Sri Lanka, lasting for more than a month, was partially lifted on the 1st of October. A curfew still comes into effect each day at 10 p.m. and continues until 4 the next morning. Interprovincial travel is also restricted. Medical experts now attribute the stark reduction in new cases, which is under 1,000 at present, to the lockdown measures. Daily deaths have also fallen below 50. Some people, however, have forgotten that we are still living in a pandemic scenario and that might bring with it some adverse consequences.
විශේෂ වශයෙන්ම තාමත් අපි පළාත් අතර සංචරණ සීමා පවත්වාගෙන යනවා. එසේ වුණත් ජනතාව මේ සිද්ධාස්ථානවලට ඒ වගේම මලගෙවල් වලට මගුල් ගෙවල් වලට තමන්ගේ පවුලේ හිතවතුන් එක්ක තියෙන උත්සවවලට තාම අධික විදිහට එකතු වෙලා බොහොම නරක විදිහට පූර්වදර්ශයක් දෙමින් තියෙනවා. විශේෂයෙන්ම මේ සති දෙකකට තුනකට ඉස්සෙල්ලා දවසකට 200ක් මියගිය රටක්. තාම මේ අසනීපේ සම්පූර්ණයෙන්ම නැති වුණා කියලා හිතන්නේ නරකයි. අපිට කිසිම වගකීමක් දෙන්න ක්‍රමයක් නැහැ. ඉදිරියේදී මේ වෛරස් එක වෙනස් වෙන්නේ නැහැ කියලා. පේනවා ලෝකේ නැවත වතාවක් අලුත් රැල්ලක් මතුවෙමින් පවතිනවා ලෝක පුරාම. රෝගීන් ප්‍රමාණය සහ මරණ ප්‍රමාණය කියලා යාගෙන එනවා. ඒක නිසා අවදානම පහව ගියා කියලා වැරදි අදහසක් ගන්න එපා.
Even at the height of the present wave, most people who develop serious conditions after contracting COVID weren't vaccinated. As of last evening, 12,360,162 people from the island's total population had been fully immunized. 2,337,978 people are also awaiting the second dose. Since the vaccine drive was expanded to people aged 20 to 29, vaccination percentages for the age group varies between 70 to 90% in various districts. However, officials say that there is still some hesitancy among the age group about the jab.
අපිට පේනවා තවමත් අවුරුදු 20-30 කාණ්ඩේ යම්කිසි තියෙනවා අඩුපාඩුවක් එන මදකමක් තියෙනවා ඉන්නත් කරන මධ්‍යස්ථානවලට. විශේෂයෙන්ම මේ සයිනෝෆාම් වෙන්නත හොඳ නැහැ කියලා ගිය ව්‍යාජ ප්‍රචාරය නිසා ඒකට අහුණ කණ්ඩායමක්. නමුත් ඊයේ අපි දැක්ක ඇමරිකා එක්සත් ජනපදයේ පවා නිවේදනයක් නිකුත් කරා සයිනෝෆාම් වෙන්නත් ලබාගත් අයට කිසිදු ප්‍රශ්නයකින් තොරව ඇමරිකා එක්සත් ජනපදයට උනත් එන්න පුළුවන් කියලා. නිසා අනියත බියක් ඒ සම්බන්ධයෙන් ඇති කරගන්න නරකයි. විශේෂයෙන්ම අපි දැක්ක විපක්ෂය සහ විවිධ කඩාකප්පල්කාරී කණ්ඩායම් මේ එන්නත්වල මිල ගණන් පිළිබඳව අනියත සැකයක් ඇති කරනවා ජනතාවගේ හිතේ. විශේෂයෙන්ම එන්නත් මිලදී ගැනීමේදී අබමල් රේණුවක හෝ වංචාවක් වෙලා නැහැ. කිසිදු සතයක හෝ පාඩුවක් අපේ රටට වෙලා නැහැ. අපේ රටට ගේන්න පුළුවන් හොඳම එන්නත් අඩුම මිලට තමයි අපි ගෙනල්ලා තියෙන්නේ. නමුත් අපි මේ එන්නත් කරන වැඩසටහන අවසන් වෙගෙන යනවත් එක්ක මේ හැම එන්නතක්ම ගෙනාවේ කොතනින්ද? කවදා මොන මුදල් ප්‍රමාණයක්ද ගෙව්වේ කියන කාරණේ එකින් එකට ඉදිරියේදී අනාවරණය කරන්න බලාපොරොත්තු වෙනවා.
We will see you on the other side of this break. Bear with us.
Big 3.
Welcome back. This is First at 9. Now, today marks the World Mental Health Day. The theme for this year by the World Health Organization is Mental Health Care for All. Let's make it a reality. To mark the day, a virtual event was organized by the WHO office in Sri Lanka and the Ministry of Health this morning. During the event, the WHO's country representative, Dr. Alaka Singh, highlighted the measures the country needs to take to make its approach to mental health issues better, which includes decentralizing of mental health care.
Mental health is one of the most neglected areas of public health. Close to 1 billion people are living with a mental disorder. Sri Lanka has made major strides in its mental health services over the past 16 years. Notably, the post-tsunami period from 2005 saw a dramatic change in mental health service provision with increased political commitment and funding. It marked a turning point with the expansion of services away from a few urban centers and increase in the number of trained personnel. However, in spite of this progress, mental health services in Sri Lanka face many challenges. Social stigma restricts people from approaching mental health services, and an aging population is limited by their ability to physically access these services. This underlines the need for more decentralized, community-based care. Social issues such as the increased use of alcohol, rates of suicide attempts and deliberate self-harm, and child mental health issues need more specialized preventive services and better coordination among existing services. The recent COVID pandemic has also brought substantial disruptions and challenges across the globe. People are afraid of COVID-19 infections. Let's not forget, children and adolescents have faced disruptions in education and an uncertain future. Frontline health workers and first responders have been continuously faced with complex and stressful situations in overwhelmed health systems.
Further, WHO representative to Sri Lanka Dr. Alaka Singh outlined the steps the country needs to take in order to improve its approach to mental health.
The UN policy brief on the need for action on mental health recommends that countries take 3 actions. First, apply a whole-of-society approach to promote, protect and care for mental health. Second, ensure widespread availability of emergency mental health and psychosocial support. And third, support recovery from COVID-19 by building mental health services fit for the future.
Addressing the same event, Director of Mental Health at the Ministry of Health, Dr. Rohan Ratnayaka, commented on the ways how the ministry is addressing the questions surrounding mental health in the island.
We are in the process of expanding community-based mental health services adequately integrated to multi-sectoral areas: education, social services, justice system, workplace, etc. Directorate of Mental Health is committed to empower and ensure full participation of community, including persons with mental disorders and psychosocial disabilities, as well as caregivers, by developing context-appropriate, culturally and socially sensitive approaches to mental health promotion, protection of rights, prevention, treatment, rehabilitation, and psychosocial support.
Former President Maithripala Sirisena today accused successive governments, including his own, for failing to manage Forex, which he said was the cause for the troubles the country is facing at the moment. His remarks came during an event that was organised to commemorate the world's first woman Prime Minister, late Madam Sirimao Bandaranaike.
The 21st commemoration of the world's first women Prime Minister, late Madam Sirimao Bandaranaike, falls today. A trailblazer, she was described as the Iron Lady of Sri Lanka. A ceremony in memory of late Madam Sirimao Bandaranaike was organised by the Sri Lanka Freedom Party today at the party headquarters. The event was attended by former President and Chairman of the SLFP, Maithripala Sirisena.
බණ්ඩාරනායක මැතිනිය සාර්ථක නායිකාවක් වුණේ ඇයි? එතුමිය සැබෑ නායිකාවක් වුණේ එතුමියට වැඩ කරන්න පුළුවන් හොඳ අවංක කණ්ඩායමක්. ඒක තමයි රහස. අවංක කණ්ඩායමක් ඉන්න ඕනේ ඕනම නායකයෙකුට. දැන් අද පොහොර ගැන කතා කරනවා, ආහාර අර්බුදය ගැන කතා කරනවා, කෘෂිකර්මාන්තයේ අවුල ගැන කතා කරනවා. අපි දන්නවාද කෘෂිකර්මාන්තයේ විශාල බරපතල අවුලක ගොවියා යන්නේන මන් නැති දැනකට වැටිලා. මං හිතන්නේ මෑත ඉතිහාසයේ කෘෂිකර්මාන්තයේ ලොකුම ඛේදවාචකය මේ දැන් සිදුවෙමින් පවතිනවා. මම දන්නේ තව ටික දවසක් යනකොට මටත් පොළොන්නරු යන්න පුළුවන් වෙයි දන්නේ. මොකද මෙහෙන්න එපා කියලා කීයද දන්නේ. ඒ තැනට ගොවීන්ගේ බොහොම සංවේදීභාවය, ආවේගශීලීභාවය, ඔවුන්ගේ ලේවලට දැනෙන මහා පීඩනය ඇති වෙලා තිබෙනවා. දැන් අද කියන්නේ ඩොලර් හිගේනේ. එතකොට 77 ඉඳලා විවෘත ආර්ථිකය විසින් රටපාලනය කරපු සෑම කෙනෙක් ඒක කොටසක් මටත් එනවා. විවෘත ආර්ථිකය තුල විදේශ වට්ටම් නිසි කළමනාකරණයක් නොකිරීමේ පාපය තමයි අද ජනතාව දුක් විඳින්නේ ඩොලර් නැතුව ආහාර ප්‍රශ්න සහ මිල ඉහළ යාම පිළිබඳව ප්‍රශ්න ඇති වෙලා තියෙනවා.
We will see you shortly. Bear with us. Welcome back. This is First at 9. Now, the president of the Hotels Association of Sri Lanka today revealed that the sector is expecting to rake in around $500 million during the coming season. But to get there, he said that certain measures have to be put in place, including the speedy relaxation of restrictions currently in place.
Tourism as a sector came to a complete standstill with the onset of the global pandemic. Helped by vaccination drives, almost 2 years on, it is now making a very slow recovery. But the very thing which made travel safe, the vaccine, is also proving to be an obstacle for would-be travellers. Some countries only accept fully vaccinated travellers while others stipulate a particular jab for travellers. But the vaccine isn't essential for travel if one is prepared to put up with quarantine procedures. Sri Lanka, a country heavily dependent on tourism for its forex needs, revised its tourist arrival guidelines encouraging vaccinated tourists to visit the island. Under Sri Lanka's current guidelines, fully vaccinated tourists completing 14 days following vaccination and with a negative PCR test conducted 48 hours prior to boarding the flight don't need to undergo quarantine. But there are some countries which allow unvaccinated tourists to enter as well. The likes of Gibraltar, Antigua and Barbuda, Croatia, Latvia, Slovenia, Turks and Caicos Islands allow travellers to enter the country without having to undergo quarantine on arrival. However, Sri Lanka has the advantage of most of these listed countries, as most of them have not managed to completely immunize 50% of their population. On that front, Sri Lanka is at 55%. So far, the country has received 37,924 tourists this year, with 13,547 tourists arriving just last month. And with the reopening of the country, industry officials are optimistic about the new prospects it could bring in, but admit that much more is needed.
As a result, we have been removed from the red list in most countries, and the industry is delighted that the country is now open for fully vaccinated travellers. But in order to make it more effective, the industry feels that we should ease restrictions on travel and gatherings. Like in most countries where majority of the population have been fully vaccinated, we are of the view that we should open restaurants and permit public events, and interprovincial travels need to be aggressively eased with, of course, maintaining the relevant health guidelines. In most countries, they have introduced vaccine passports to enter public places. As we are all trying to find ways and means to live with the virus, perhaps this is something we should consider.
President of the Hotels Association of Sri Lanka, Sanat Tukwata, also ventured into expected revenue during the coming season.
The other issue we are facing now is to get hotels ready to receive tourists. As we have been closed or in partial operations for the past 2 years, we are working round the clock to get our rooms ready. As most of our members are in the small and medium or SME category, we have requested the government to offer a working capital facility to prepare our hotels. Overall, we are expecting the season to take off in mid-November and to reach our targets from December through to Easter. At the moment, the entire industry is working collectively to reach a $500 million earnings by end of the first quarter next year. So we are all looking forward to a great start for this winter and to receive more tourists than last year.
And that's it from all of us here at First at 9. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.